Okay, I think my hair is a mess, but that is mom life for you. Welcome back. If you're a little bit new here, I am a big Sanderson fan and I am getting ready to read Wind and Truth so soon. I'm getting ready by rereading the first 4 books in the Stormlight archive. I am now on Rhythm of War and we're gonna do that again. I'm now on Rhythm of War, the last book to read before Wind and Truth comes out, and I am so excited. It has been such a good journey and I'm sharing my experience with y'all. So let's get to it. So I actually read Dawnshard real quick before I dove into Rhythm of War. And it's funny because I was actually kind of behind in my reading schedule. I had meant to read Rhythm of War all in November and I didn't start it until like the last week of November. But I had just finished Oathbringer and I was like, you know what? I should read Dawnshard. I should. It would just be such... it's actually a very important story to just remember some of the basics of what happens. And I remember really enjoying it when I first read it. So I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. And then I was like looking at the book and I was like, it's only 290 pages. Like, that's nothing. And especially if you look at it, not only are there fewer pages in this book, but the pages are smaller and the words are bigger and there's just fewer words per page. So like 290 of this compared to over 1,000, how much? Like roughly 1,200 in this? This was nothing. It took me a few days. And only because I had like other stuff going on and couldn't like devote a whole day to reading this. I could have read it all in one day if I wanted to. If I didn't have like a full-time mom gig and a part-time editor gig. Anyway, Dawnshard was really fun. I think I actually might have enjoyed it more than I did my first time reading it. And I think part of that was because I've so recently been reading all of Rizen's interludes. And so I think also I just really love her as a character. I've just grown to love her more and more as I've progressed with her throughout the series, and it's just been so great following her. And I loved her arc of just grappling with her disability and trying to still be independent and still accept help when she needs it and make life better for herself and easier, and you know, all these things that these people have to grapple with in that kind of situation. And seeing her still just, even though she gets thrown into tough situations where it seems like even a normal person might not be able to get themselves out of it, and she just doesn't back down and she doesn't give up, and she uses what skills she has, what abilities she has, and she rocks it. She's amazing. She's so capable. I love Rizen. She is such a strong woman. I love her. I also really enjoyed Lopen in this book. I think he's one of those characters where if you have a little bit too much of him, you can get annoyed with him pretty quickly. But I think with just revisiting everybody in Bridge 4 and coming to really love them and follow them on their journeys, and you see Lopen go on his own journey throughout this book where he realizes, he has like a very humble moment where he realizes that he sometimes hurts people's feelings when he teases them, and that he has to be more aware of that and be a little more sensitive in the jokes that he cracks, you know? And it's such a great lesson that he learns. And there's just so many great moments where, you know, his cousin Huio gets his shard blade right before Lopen does. And that's like such a great moment where it's ironic, but it's also just right. And Lopen and Rizen connecting a little bit about how, you know, for a while he only had one arm and now she can't use her legs, and just like connecting over that, just the similarities that they have in their different circumstances. Anyway, I think it's overall a really great read. I think potentially the climax almost, it almost feels like things get resolved too easily in the deal that Rizen makes, but I also don't feel like complaining about it. So at the same time, it still makes sense and it works. So I don't feel like complaining about it. It was good. It was fine. So Dawnshard was great. And I have actually finished part 1 of Rhythm of War, and it was also great. I am enjoying Rhythm of War more than I remember enjoying it when I first read it. I think Rhythm of War was actually my least favorite of the books from my first read through of the series, and again, that was like largely split up and read mostly as books came out. And you guys have heard me talking about some things that I am excited for in Rhythm of War if you've been watching my past vlogs, and so you know that there are some things that I really am excited for and that I do love in this book. But one of the things that I remember most is that I remember being frustrated with how short some of the chapters were. I think at a certain point in the book it felt like there was just too much going back and forth for me, which I haven't noticed that nearly as much this time around. So maybe it's only into like part 3 or 4 or something like that where it starts to get a little bit more choppy or something. That's probably what I'm thinking of. I also remember being a little bit more frustrated with some of the sentence fragments in Brandon's writing when I was reading this book. And that's just some personal preferences on how to use punctuation and use sentence fragments, but it's not really a big deal. And this time around I haven't noticed nearly as many bugging me. I think I've just gotten more into the flow of Brandon's style right now, where like I've just been in his prose for so long that it just all comes naturally. Like it reads naturally to me, and so I'm just getting fewer and fewer like moments jump out at me that seem weird, I think. And don't take that as me saying that like I can't enjoy sentence fragments in books. Like sometimes I'm just picky. It's fine. Anyway, part 1 to me was a really great buildup of all these different things. There are so many different characters now who are on their own journeys and doing their own things, and there is a lot to set up in this book. But the main storylines that we're getting are Adolin and Shallan. Shallan's working with the Ghostbloods. Adolin is worried about Shallan. They just got married. And Adolin is really wrestling with some feelings he's got with his father there. It's just their relationship's a little bit strained, which I think works really well considering where Oathbringer left off. And even though it's been a little bit since the end of Oathbringer, I think it's been like almost a year when Rhythm of War picks up. There's a lot that Adolin still kind of has to work out and discover, and this is just such a good book for Adolin. It's such a good book. And of course Dalinar is getting ready to try to make a little bit more progress in this war. He and Yasna decide to take some army to go help the Azish front lines, and trying to wrestle with the betrayal of Taravangian and worry that he's going to kind of like betray them further, but there's not much they can do about it because politics. And then Kaladin, of course. Oh, okay. So the biggest thing really in part 1 is that Kaladin gets like demoted and promoted at the same time. He basically gets pulled back from being on front lines, and he still has like a lot of authority, a lot of responsibility, but he's basically told, you've got to find a different way to help us out because you can't be in battle anymore. Too much battle shock. So Kaladin takes a step back, and it's really hard for him, but what's great is that his family is there, and he's able to start working as a surgeon again with his father, and there's again like a little bit of a strained relationship there, but also you can tell that Kaladin cares so much about his family, and it's good for him to be with them again too. And I love also seeing Syl worry so much about Kaladin, and she's trying so hard to help him. Actually, one of the interludes right after part 1 was Syl talking to the Stormfather and saying, I want to understand, what is this darkness that Kaladin is struggling with? Like, I need to understand him so I can help him. And she's trying so hard, and I relate to that. Oh, I guess I should jump back to the fact that Navani is another actually huge key player in this book. This book actually is kind of Navani's book in a way. Like, she has a huge role to play because she's not just like the queen, but she has this underlying passion to be a scholar and to really discover and work things out. And she's been telling herself this lie for like the whole series, that she's not really a scholar. And she keeps telling herself, I'm just like nudging the scholars along. I'm just funding them. I'm just helping them develop their ideas a little bit, but they do all the real work. And it's such a lie. Because she's really brilliant, and you've seen throughout the series that she really is so capable, but we haven't really gotten to see her like shine yet, and that's coming. And anyway, so most of the part 1 has really just been like set up of how she's you know, she wants to make time to work on a project, but she has kind of other meetings that she's being a queen and running Yuratharu. So she's got a lot on her plate. And I also relate to that a lot as well. I feel like a lot of women are in a position like Navani, where they have a lot of different things they want to contribute to. They have responsibilities at home, at work, their hobbies, and it's hard to balance it all. It really, really is. I think especially where I am now in my life, I've had a lot more experience with trying to juggle motherhood and my career at the same time, and sometimes not being able to balance both of them, and sometimes being able to balance both, and also, you know, take into account all the other things in my life. And it's just, it's a lot, and it's hard sometimes to factoring in those expectations that society seems to have of, you know, what women should be doing with their lives. And it's great to see a very strong and smart and capable woman who is so passionate about what she wants to do, and I'm just so excited for her to discover that she can do it in this book. I think I've been kind of converted to Navani's character. Anyway, it's been such a good read so far. It's gone by so much faster than I thought it would. Like, I finished part 1 so fast. I was like, wow, I'm already this far. Like, I didn't expect to get here quite so fast. So I'm excited to keep going, and I'll check back in with you on part 2. All right, I finished part 2, and it was so good. I am having the best time following Adolin and Shallan in Shadesmar. I mean, it's just such a fun, just unique aspect of the world, and I am really loving seeing Adolin interact with Maya, and how like all the other Spren, they like don't understand their relationship, and they're so confused and so like uneasy, and you can tell that like Adolin doesn't really know how to explain like how he's gained like her trust and kind of like helped her reach this state, like her able to communicate state, but it's just like it's just so good watching them interact. It's so fun. And this part for Shallan is when she knows that there's like a spy who has been reporting back to the Ghostbloods, and she's trying to figure out who it is, and she has her suspects who are there with her. And I remembered like probably halfway through part 2 that it's not somebody she suspects, and that it's actually Pattern. And I was like, oh, it's coming. I think that's a really well done reveal. Something else that I love in this part is that Kaladin kind of like finds his purpose again, right? He realizes that people who are kind of like him, who have some sort of mental struggle like he does, they are not treated well. There's not a lot of scholarship even on how to treat people with his kind of ailments, and he is like kind of horrified, right, at what they're going through, and decides he's gonna change things. And it's gonna take a lot of work, it's gonna take a lot of time, but he throws himself into it, and he's finding so much purpose and fulfillment from doing that. And it's so great. And it's also so sad that like almost as soon as he gets started, the invasion of the tower happens, and the singers take over, and it's so it's kind of a tough moment, and also especially a really tough moment to see him kind of clash with his father at the end of it. It's just the stakes are high. It's tough. So it's really hard to see that kind of get taken away from Kaladin so fast at the end, but it'll get there. it'll be fine. It was really great seeing Navani step up to leadership while the invasion was happening, but it is exciting to see the sibling like forced to communicate with her, and forced to give up some information. The interludes were great. I like Liv's interlude here. I think it gives you like some really good insight into why she is the way she is. It's a good one. And Taravangian's interlude is also really good. It really leaves you with kind of this like kind of hope, but also like it's actually really interesting because it's really easy to hate Taravangian for what he's doing, but in this interlude I feel like it brings a little bit of humanity to him. The fact that he is still hoping and he really wants the best for humanity as much as he can do, and he also has so many like limitations because of his condition, so it's really interesting. You kind of love him again, but you also like, oh, he's in a hard position, that's for sure. But it's interesting that he has unique insights as, you know, dumb but compassionate Taravangian. And it's cool how he's starting to, he realizes that he has emotional intelligence and that he can use that still. So that's cool. Anyway, I'm very excited for part 3. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so I finished part 3 and then I promptly lost my voice. And so I just kept reading through part 4, hoping my voice would come back quickly, and it didn't, and I had to go on vocal rest, and then I finished part 4 and my voice still wasn't quite back, and you know, part 5 is usually never very long. So then I finished part 5 yesterday, and here I am with my voice pretty much back, but if I talk too much it starts to sound like I'm a smoker, which I'm not, so that's fun. So now I have to try to recap part 3 and part 4 and part 5, and it's just all blurring together, so I'm doing my best. And I'm so bummed because I had so much to say right after I finished part 3, and then I couldn't say any of it because I literally couldn't talk. It's fine. Okay, I think one of the things that I remember like most experiencing from part 3 is that Kaladin's hiding out in the tower, like he's running from the pursuer, trying not to get caught. He's trying to keep Teft safe because the invasion has just happened, right? And he's decided to take Teft with him, and he's just running, trying to escape. And for a bit there, all the fused and regals chasing him, they're like tightening in kind of like a noose, and it's literally just because the sibling in the tower intervenes that he's able to like slip away. It was so intense. He almost got caught. I was feeling the intensity. I remember when I first read the book that I was really feeling the conflict between Kaladin's dad, Lirin, his perspective, and then Kaladin's perspective of where Lirin is like, we need to be peaceful, we need to not resist against, you know, whoever's ruling over us, and we need to just try to live our peaceful lives the best that we can with what we have, and protect our families that way. And Kaladin is like, no, sometimes you have to fight back, sometimes you have to take a stand, and sometimes the best way to protect people is to fight. It's funny because I feel like in real life I would be more on Lirin's side. I would be like, no, we shouldn't be fighting, we should try to stay peaceful. But like in the books I tend to kind of cheer for people like Kaladin who do stand up and fight. So, but I think this read through, I guess I just sympathized with more sides better. I guess I sympathized with Kaladin better because I see how important it was for him to still be fighting and the hope that he was for everybody. And obviously he made a huge difference because he was free. And honestly, the only way he was gonna stay alive was by running away, because otherwise the pursuer would have found him, and that would have been bad. Early on in like part 2, one of Navani's scholars creates like this kind of funny lift fabrial thing where like it's like a glove that can launch people into the air while weights in the tower are falling down, and it's actually really kind of dangerous because you could like rip your arm off if you're not careful. And so he makes like some tweaks to it that make it a little bit better, but it's still kind of like, it's not as good as like what a windrunner can do. And Navani manages to get that prototype to Kaladin for him to practice with, and I feel like, I can't remember if he practices with it in part 3 or part 4, but she's like, this might be a way for you to get around the tower since your powers aren't fully working, right? So he's practicing with that like wrist thing. For some reason, like that part of like exploring like what the little glove thing can do always felt kind of like not quite boring, but kind of like, I don't know, it almost felt like it didn't fit, I guess. On this reread, I can appreciate a little bit more how you do need to have some kind of terrible inventions before you get to really good inventions. And so I'm hoping that somehow that like invention that one scholar worked on like iterates into something a lot more interesting and cool in Wind and Truth, or maybe later books down the road. But I also appreciated a little bit more this time how Kaladin was able to kind of fake that he still had all of his powers because he had that tool. So there's that. Navani, of course, I really enjoyed in this section. I enjoyed her in all of the parts, but she's trying so hard to do what she can with what she has, right? She's trying to really like sneakily work with a sibling, work with her scholars, kind of distract from what she's really trying to do. And in the end, at the end of part 3, she finds out that Raboniel has been listening into all of her conversations that she's had with the sibling. And so every time that she has gotten the sibling to tell her where one of her security notes are, the Sinkers find it first because they heard Navani uncover it. And so she finally realizes with the third one, when it happens, that she's like, oh, I led them right to that. And it's so sad because she's totally betrayed the sibling, but it was totally not on purpose. And she really is somebody the sibling can trust. It's just that she had no idea, and the sibling had no idea that they were being eavesdropped on. It's such a moment of failure, and actually it's really kind of impressive. And now I can say, having read the whole book, part 3 and part 4 both end with Navani having these huge failures where she really made a huge breakthrough on her studies and her relationship with the sibling and these different things, but the Singers just take huge advantage of it. And her plan to like try to like keep the Singers from fully seeing what she's doing, it just doesn't work, and the odds are stacked against her. And it's just like these really big crushing moments of like, she worked so hard and she did so good, but it didn't work out. Something else I was really excited to see, so obviously Dalinar plays a very small role in this book. He's just kind of off fighting his war, and you just get occasional like small chapters where you really just kind of see some in-between things where you kind of see him talking strategy with the other leaders and thinking about, you know, the deal he wants to make with Odium, and he's trying to figure that out. And you don't see a ton of like the action of the war playing out. And first of all, I love the scene where Yasna kind of like takes some control, and she's just showing that she's still trying to kind of find the balance of being a monarch and being a leader. She's trying really hard to like use past Alethi culture and expectations and really move the kingdom forward into new ideas, new structure, new things. And I'm really excited to see where Yasna takes her kingdom in the future. Like, I think she's a very capable leader and she's going to make some really good changes. But back to Dalinar. He has been, you know, thinking this whole time, like, what can I do to really end this war? I can't just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And he finally has the thought that there's a herald who is probably mostly insane, but maybe not completely, and he was a bondsmith and he can train Dalinar. And he's like, I gotta go get in touch with this herald and see if I can get him on our side. Because a couple of the heralds, they have them and they're able to talk to them and interview them and get some sort of like help and understanding from them. And he's like, if I can get some training in my powers from this herald, like, I could change everything. And I'd totally forgotten that was something that he was slowly working towards in this book. So I'm really... I was like, oh, go Dalinar, this is so cool. So I was excited to see that and remind myself that that's something that Dalinar was working on a bit behind the scenes. We also do see a lot of Venli, of course, in the tower, and she keeps trying to find the balance between doing her job as a regal, as a voice to one of the fused, and trying to still be in line with the oaths she's already made as a Radiant, and trying to keep progressing and say her next one. And I think in part 3 was the part where Lift gets captured and she obviously feels guilty. She's like, I wish I could do something to free her, but she doesn't feel like she really can. And then she finds out that Relaine is captured and she's like, well, I'm gonna go get him out. I can use my influence to get him, like, you know, under my care, kind of like, you know, in a good position in the tower, which is great that she does that. And then she's like about to say her next words because she's freed him, and then she's like, but I can't because I just left this other little girl in a cage. And anyway, so I love that she's really having to explore like just how selfish she is, and in a way it makes sense because she really can't do too much or else she's gonna get caught and probably killed. But at the same time, like, she knows she needs to keep working to get to a place where she can do more. I like the progress that Bentley starts to make. Let me go ahead and switch gears to part 4, which I also really, really loved. It was so intense. One thing that I missed in part 3 was that Adolin and Shallan, we didn't get to see anything from them. We just had to wait until part 4, and I was so excited to get back to them with the trial and everything that happens there. I love that Adolin he can't be anybody but himself. There's this moment in the trial where Nodam, he's this friend who he had met before in Shadesmar, who had helped him out a little bit, and then he was like exiled, and then he gets beaten up, and so Adolin like rescues him. So they have like a bit of this like past history, and this honors friend is supposed to testify against Adolin and say all these things about how he's not an honorable person and can't be trusted. And Adolin is like feeling betrayed, like, this, I thought we were at least somewhat friends because I like rescued you and you've helped me, and but he's like, you know what, I get it. Just say what you need to say. Do what you gotta do. I can't expect anything more than honesty from you, right? And he expects Nodam to go off about him and the things that Adolin has done wrong. And Nodam, he's like, I can't testify. And he starts screaming, honor is not dead so long as he lives in the hearts of men. Sorry, I messed that up. But he starts like saying that, and all the spread are like, what? And freaking out. But it's this great moment where you see that like Adolin, if he had been somebody else, he might have, you know, kept insisting like, this guy can't testify against me or something like that, or everything he says isn't true or whatever. But instead he goes like, you know what, just be honest with what you think. And that prompts the honors friend to actually say what he thinks and to say, basically, Adolin is like full of honor, right? Which was so cool, so cool. And I just love that Adolin is just being himself and impressing people in this way. And of course, the greatest moment, the moment that I was waiting for, it was funny. I was like trying to read the chapter where Maya is the last testimony against Adolin. I'm trying to read this chapter because I know what this moment is, and it's one of my favorite moments in the whole series. And I'm trying to read it, and my kids keep interrupting me, needing this and needing that, and I had all these things interrupting me. And at one point I turned to my husband and I'm saying in like I think I actually had to text him about it because I couldn't talk at that point, but I was like, I've been trying to read this chapter all day and I can't read it because I keep getting interrupted, and it's all I want to do. I want to read this chapter. It's so good. So it's the moment when the honors friend in charge of the trial, he's like, obviously this Deadeye is, you know, the last testimony we need. Like, she's obviously like in pain and so hurt to be, you know, in this situation, and Adolin is saying like, let her go, she's obviously uncomfortable being here in front of all these people, like she's not comfortable, let her go. And the honest friend is like, no, I know exactly how she's feeling. Okay, this is so ironic, I just got interrupted by my kids talking about my favorite part of this book. Well, so Maya is like freaking out and Adolin is like, please just let her go. At one point he can feel Maya's emotions. Like their bond is growing stronger and he can feel her emotions, and finally he kind of thinks to her like, take my strength. And she's finally able to speak. She speaks, which no Deadeye has ever been able to do. And she says, we chose. And she is able to just very briefly explain that the Spren chose to face the consequences of what the Radiants did when they broke their oaths. Like, it was not something that just happened to them. They were involved in deciding what would happen. They didn't expect that they would die in that way, but they were partly responsible. And like, that's obviously like a testimony that they can't ignore. An actual Deadeye is saying it was not the humans' fault. We chose together. It's just so incredibly exciting that you can see that like Adolin and Maya's bond is growing so strong, and that she actually cares about him and wants to protect him and help him. Like, oh, I just love it. And I just cannot wait to see where their relationship goes and how things keep progressing in Wind and Truth. Like, oh, I'm so excited. I also love the decision that Shallan makes in this part. So she's struggling, of course, with like her different kind of personalities and keeps thinking that she has to like hide herself and not be herself. And of course it's revealed that she previously actually killed this Bren, which is hard to blame her for doing because she was just a child at the time. I just love that she chooses not to go through with killing the Herald. I just love that she like really stands up against the Ghost Bloods. The other thing that is just so great about part 4 is just seeing how Navani and Raboniel, like their relationship, you can tell that Raboniel has so much respect for Navani and really sees her as a scholar, and Navani is starting to realize throughout this section that she is one, and she finally has a chance to set aside everything because she really has power over nothing except she has the freedom to kind of research and experiment like Raboniel has given her leave to do, and she loves it. And I just love that she's just really discovering that she is a great scholar, and she kind of goes through these different phases of discovering light. And a lot of people seem to not love these parts of this book, I think, because they get a little bogged down in all the science, but I love it. I think part of it is because there's some music theory involved, and I love music theory. I don't know, I never really loved like physics and science and that stuff in school, but seeing it in this kind of setting where it's like in a book and it's, I don't know, for some reason it seems so like real and interesting in this kind of setting for me. Anyway, I love seeing Navani make the progress she does, and I really just love how she and Raboniel are like kind of forced to work together to create this new rhythm. They like have to sing together, and I love how Navani is able to pick it up, and she trains herself to be able to hear the tones, because that is something that you can do. I mean, I know some people who have perfect pitch, and I don't have perfect pitch, but I have in the past trained myself to be able to hear, for instance, in choir or in band, when voices or instruments are trying to play the same tone, and I can hear when, you know, they're not in perfect unison. I'm not as good as I used to be, but like I've been able to hear that once I've trained my ear to do that, and that's something that Navani's learning to do. So I'm kind of partial, I think, to her experience with that because I've also kind of experienced that. What's so cool, now I don't remember if this was in part 4 or part 5, because part 4 ends when Navani discovers anti-void light, and she tries so hard to like set off some traps to keep Raboniel from getting it, and they go off, but they don't quite work the way she hoped, and so she ends up giving this secret away to Raboniel. She basically just handed the war to the singers, and she feels awful. And so it's a great end to part 4 where she's just devastated. Oh, and I forgot to be talking about any of the interludes, but the interludes were just great. We got one from Cheery Cheery at the end of part 3. That was so fun. And of course we got some great interludes with Taravangian and Zeth. Interludes are always great. I absolutely love in part 5 when Navani is able to trick Raboniel, and she's basically defeated her, but then Moash comes for her and she's trying to fend him off, and Raboniel actually gets up and fights off Moash so that Navani basically has time to get to the sibling, and that's where the sibling decides to bond her, and Navani suddenly, you know, has her power moment where she's able to fight off Moash. That's such a good moment where she fights him off and gives him a little bit of payback for what he did to her son. And but then she like finds Raboniel at the end, and Raboniel is like all but dead, and it's a really touching moment because like you realize they really did build a bit of a friendship. They really respect each other so much, and Navani ends up killing Raboniel, basically giving her a mercy to like kill her soul so she doesn't have to be reborn and be tortured by odium. And Navani is like actually sad when it happens, and I love how the sibling says, and that's why this is a mercy. Okay, let's switch gears to talking about Kaladin, because at the end of part 4 he had been facing off the pursuer again, and it was this kind of crazy moment where he had just found out. So Teft dies fighting off Moash, and okay, now I gotta interrupt my Kaladin spiel to talk about Teft, because Teft has come so far in these books. He, you know, is fighting off his addiction. He's essentially overcome it. I love it. At the end, he's full of this like confidence and hope. He's so close to like saying another ideal. And I love that line at the end of his last chapter where it says that, you know, he was full of confidence and hope when he died. still. And so Kaladin finds him and is so emotional to find that like Tef didn't make it and that he wasn't there to protect Tef, and it's like it's breaking him. I think it was Moash. He's like, okay, you gotta leave Kaladin there, leave him in this state, because he's either going to choose to unalive himself or he's going to choose to turn his pain over to Odium, because he's like so far gone. And the pursuer, of course, being the pursuer, he's like so driven by vengeance and his insecurities, his jealousies, and he's like, no, I can't just wait here. I'm gonna go kill him because it's my right. He killed me, I gotta kill him. And that's like what ruins everything. It's like that one choice. And so Kaladin ends up like kind of snapping and takes down the pursuer. Some of the Regals are running away with Kaladin's dad, who has been captured, and Kaladin starts chasing them, and he's again full of rage and can hardly think straight, and his dad gets pushed off the tower, and so then Kaladin jumps off after him. And I think that's the end of Kaladin in part 4. And so part 5 is showing him as he's falling, and there's a high storm going, of course, and so Dalinar comes in the storm with the Stormfather and is able to see him falling and is able to give him kind of just like a few moments, because the high storm can give him a chance to kind of like be caught up in a vision where he can kind of have some time to kind of talk and think things out a little bit, which he needed. And I just love that Kaladin, like, he finally comes to terms with the fact that he can't be there for everybody. Anyway, so he finally gets to like say his last ideal, and that helps him save his father from falling, and now he's got his cool shard plate from all the wind spread. And it's really cool how the shard plate works when it's like actual like Knight's Radiant working shard plate. Very, very cool. And I mentioned this, I think, in my last vlog in the Oathbringer one, that I love that it's taken him 2 books to come to terms with this fact. It's been like a really long journey for him to accept like he can't protect everybody. Okay, I forgot to talk about this part where Yasna, I think this is in part 4, where Yasna goes on the front lines in her shard plate just to experience what battle is like. I think that was a great choice on her part. I have a lot of respect for her for just wanting to like experience the raw emotion of battle and to understand, right, what it's like to be on the front lines, even as a shard bearer. I also really love seeing her relationship with Wit develop. Like, it's just so interesting, and I hope we get some more of that in Wind and Truth, because they're kind of an unlikely couple, but just right for each other, you know. And of course, like, everything with Taravangian unfolds at the end of this book, where Seth goes to Taravangian and, you know, decides on his own to kill him. So Taravangian, he's like so emotional, and I love that he's like, he's so afraid, he's so sad, he's so like all these things, like his emotions are out of control, but there's this moment where he feels brave. It's like the bravest he's ever been. And he's able to draw Nightblood, and that defeats the host of Odium, right? Ray's, and allowing Taravangian suddenly, in his very emotional state, to become Odium. And I just love it. And wow, it's like the most chilling epilogue when Wit is, you know, having this conversation with Odium, and he thinks he's talking with Ray's, but he's actually talking with Taravangian. And so Taravangian, he makes a bit of a misstep in how he talks to him, and he kind of reveals that he's not Ray's. And Wit is like, what's going on? And then Taravangian manages to like alter his memory just a little bit to erase like the past 5 minutes, and then have the expected conversation with him. And Wit is like, yeah, that went exactly as I expected. And it's so chilling. I am so excited for Wind and Truth now, like so hyped, and I'm so glad that I have reread all these books like back to back as I have, because now I've got so many details fresh in my mind, and especially just like some of these last chapters in Rhythm of War were just so key in understanding there's this new fused character. There's going to be some real interesting things to do potentially with some metallurgy stuff going on. So I'm excited that I have a bit more perspective on who that is. I have more information about what Voidlight is, and Stormlight and Towerlight, and the anti-Voidlight and anti-Stormlight. Like that's all fresh in my mind. I know like fresh like what the contract is between Dalinar and Odium, and all of Dalinar's plans to go find that Herald, and like all these things. Like it's just like the setup is all there, you know, and I'm ready to just dive in, and I can't wait. Just thank you all for joining me on this vlogging journey. I know it's been a lot of chaos where like I was literally in the hospital reading The Way of Kings. I was holding a baby a lot of times during my vlogs. I lost my voice for this last part. It's been a journey over these last few months, but for me it's been the best journey. I've been so obsessed with the Cosmere, and it's just been like the best world to be immersed in. It's so vibrant and unique, and I love these characters so much. I love this series. I think it is my favorite series of all time, besides maybe The Wheel of Time. It's just the themes that come out about human nature and just this incredible world we get to explore. These incredible moments where these characters, they get to their lowest point and they find some strength and some truth, and they overcome what they're facing against all odds. It's so empowering, and oh man, so many moments that just hit me, and that's about all I can say. There has been my journey. I can't wait to finish Wind and Truth. Thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope that you have gotten to read Wind and Truth if you're looking forward to it. A journey before destination, guys, and pass more books as always.